أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فإذا سويته ونفخت فيه من روحي فقعوا له ساجدين فسجد الملائكة كلهم أجمعون إلا إبليس استكبر وكان من الكافرين صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. I bear witness that there is no God other than Allah. And I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is the last, the final messenger of Allah, after whom no prophet, old or new, will come. And I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. The verse of the Quran, or verses of the Quran that I've recited, are taken from chapter 38. And I interpret them as follows. Whenever I am finished with him or her, and inspire into him or her my excellent qualities, then lower yourself to him or her in humble service or support. The angels, the forces of nature, all of them together humbly serve. Other than Iblis, the insane one, the inner negative aspect, he is puffed with pride or arrogance, and he has become useless, a kafir. Sometimes it's important to wonder why, when we talk about religion, and you talk especially about Islam, to describe religions, you have different terminology and different explanations as to what is Hinduism, what is Christianity, what is Judaism, Buddhism, what is Islam. But Islam, we all know, is based upon a single principle, one principle. La ilaha illallah. No God is there other than Allah. How can the entire world or universe run on a principle like this? But then if you look at it and you ask yourself the question, the people of the world today are searching, especially the educated and knowledgeable ones, whom we call scientists. They have been exploring the origin of the universe, how it has come into being, all of this. They have come to a common conclusion, most of them, majority of them perhaps, that it was caused by a Big Bang. But that cannot explain, even in the physical world, certain things that came about. Now, certain things they said after the Big Bang, you had different processes, and then when it comes to Earth, everything on Earth came through what is called the theory, not law, the theory of evolution, that things evolve. But you look at a simple thing like water. First of all, how it came on Earth, because the Earth was supposed to be, if it was part of the sun or something, was a fiery ball. It cooled, how it cooled, what cooled it, breeze or wind had to come somewhere. Some people say droplets of water came, and where they came from, and they just cooled the earth. And then you had to have this enormous amount of water that made the oceans. And then of course you can go on and on. But take a simple thing like water. Did the Big Bang determine that water has certain properties? That water and oil will not mix. But that if you put soap in water, you would be able to get them to mix to form what is called an emulsion. Just as we have emulsion paints, which is oil in a sense, oily substance or plastic substance with water, but in a particular suspension. So there are a lot of things that cannot be explained. That even oil, if you look at a plate that you're washing with cold water, it may not take off the oil or the fat that is there. But if you put hot boiling water, it will get rid of it. Did the Big Bang think up all of these things? This is just a simple example, and there are thousands of examples that you can put. But yet still, the origin of the world, in some physical way, however it is explained, has not explained the concept and the principle of human values. Human values, human personality, human characteristics that we find among human beings and you don't find among other creatures. How did these come about? We may say, yes, that there is love among animals. We don't know if the male and female animals actually love each other or they mate by instinct. But we say sometimes that animals, as pets, love people and people love them. So there's a sharing of love. But animals don't have justice. They don't have truth. They may have patience, quite a lot of them wait for their prey. And there are so many other qualities. Charity, the animal is not charitable to say, well, one day a lion will say, well, I will give that deer that I'm hunting a rest today. I would not, unless perhaps the lion is injured or it's. So when you ask all of these questions, science and the answers they give to the origin of the world cannot account for them. But coming back to the principle of why religion, Islam is based, and correct Islam that is. Many people will tell you Islam has pillars and they have different things that you have to do to be. But the basic essence of Islam is the oneness of God, that there is a God and there is no other. And these qualities and attributes come from God, but that's not enough. The Quran goes on to explain in very simple language, sometimes by means of a story, what we call an allegory, to explain how these attributes function in our lives. And this is one such verse. We know the Quran gives us the origin of human beings in the form of a story of Adam. And it says Allah, in certain places the story is different in different parts of the Quran. In chapter 2 it says we have created the human being as a Khalifa, and the name Adam is given. But in chapter 38 and in other chapters, reference is made to the creation of a human being, all human beings, not only Adam. And similar incidents occur with regards to the relationship between Adam and what Allah intends for the development of the human being. In the very first verses that deal with the creation of human beings, there are two clear principles that are laid down for human beings to function, other than their physical self. And those two principles are what we call humility and arrogance. They are opposite. To be humble or to be arrogant, to be swell-headed, to be puffed with pride. The Quran uses the word istikbar, that comes from the word kabir, means big. It means you want to be big, you big up somebody. They become swell-headed, their head becomes big, they become puffed up, as we say. These are expressions we use to show a person who is arrogant. And so, the Quran also goes further to demonstrate how human beings are so humble, as is the intention of Allah. It says, we have created you from dust. And then the Quran speaks about hard-hearted people, that their hearts become hard like stone, or even harder than that. So these analogies and these metaphors are used to give us an understanding of human beings. So that human beings have actually two sides to their nature, a good and a bad. And these are influenced by internal makeup of the human being as well as external. And so the Quran, in dealing with the creation of human beings, tells us first of the internal makeup of human beings and its functions in relationship with the external forces. And so it said, Allah says here, whenever I am finished, it says here, وَإِذْ سَوَّيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. فَإِنْ سَوَّيْتُهُ. Now some people think that means, sawait means to be make perfect and complete. That when I have made a human being perfect and complete and so on, angels are said to bow down to him. That's the normal interpretation and translation. Some go further and say this applies not to the time of birth or creation, but it applies to the time when a person is spiritually developed. Then they get, of course, these are references from different parts of the Quran. But here the Quran is saying, when I'm finished with him or her, in other words, when I have finished with the human being, not only making him physical with all the organs, the heart and the kidneys and all of these things, but I have also placed within the human being the capacity to have my attributes. I'm giving him a character, a personality. So when I'm finished with him, now I will breathe into him my excellent qualities, ruh. The excellent qualities of Allah, when transferred to human beings, is called ruh. So I will put into this material body, I will put spiritual things, I will put qualities that it is capable of developing. Just as we have in a human being, physically we have stem cells, this is the stem personality, so spiritual stem cells. I've put into the human beings qualities that can indeed be developed. So Allah is saying now to the external forces, there are spiritual forces and physical forces, just as we know. There are things external which can affect us negatively and positively. Medicine can help us, vaccines can help us. At the same time, hormones within us can contribute to our growth and development, good or bad. And things that are internal, bacteria within us can be good or as well as bad. So the Quran points out to us that there are two forces that are there. The angelic forces, the forces of nature, all of them, and the Quran, there are some people who think that when God says to the angel, bow down to Adam, and Iblis did not, Iblis is of the jinn, that he was an angel and become a fallen angel and all these kinds of things. That is not in the Quran. In this verse of the Quran particularly, it mentions, it says, فَسَجَدَ الْمَلَائِكَةُ كُلُّهُمْ أَجْمَعُونَ كُلُّهُمْ أَجْمَعُونَ, that the angels bow down or submitted or surrendered, all of them, all together, all, kul, two phrases are used here, adjectives are used. Kullu means each and every one of them, and ajma'in means all together, without exception. So how could we say now, illa Iblis, except Iblis, means that Iblis was an angel? No, it is other than Iblis. Iblis was given a separate command to bow down. And the Quran asks that question. So why didn't you bow down? And Iblis gave an answer, and that's a different subject for a different khutbah. But Iblis was not of an angel. The Quran clearly says that he was of the jinn. Kana min al jinn. He was of the jinn. And that is also something that needs to be explained. So it is important to also realize that the angelic forces, whether the material forces or spiritual forces, are all subject to, the Quran says here, Allah said to them, what should they do? When I have finished with them and inspired them, then lower yourself to him or her in humble service. In other words, give support. The human being, in order to develop qualities of love and kindness and charity and all of these that we've been talking about so many times, needs support in order to interact with people, in order to develop those qualities within himself or herself. This is what the Quran is pointing out here. But the Quran is saying here that there is another aspect within the human being that tends to adopt a naysay attitude, to have negative and lazy, lackadaisical, I don't want to do it. So a person may want to give charity, encourage, they see a situation, I would like to give charity. But then something comes in your mind and said, I don't think that person is deserving. Or things are really hard for me, I should look after myself first, so I can't do it. I don't have the strength, I don't have the ability, I don't know how to contact the person. All kinds of things can come. What the Quran calls that Iblis, naysaying. To always find a negative approach to anything positive that you want to do. It's simply as that. The Quran itself points out to us that there are two things there. We are driven to do things, but then there are those who know what we are doing, but tend to be obstructive. They don't want us to, the qualities or influences or thoughts or ideas or circumstances, all of these can have a negative impact upon. And the Quran further goes on to say the reason for that is astakbara, because of arrogance, because of swell-headedness, because of pride. And it says, kana min al-kafirin. Now this word kafir needs to be thoroughly understood, because it is usually applied to a disbeliever, unbeliever. Words that actually don't occur in the Quran. Maybe in the English translation, they do in some places. But what kafir means, it's the opposite of shukr. Shukr means, and the Quran is quite clear on that, it speaks about kufr and shukr. Shukr means to make full use of what you have been given. Anything that you are given, you are grateful in the sense that you use it. You may not use it right away, but you utilize it. That's what it was given to you for, to utilize in proper ways, whatever it may be. Could be advice, could be knowledge, could be material things. Children are given knowledge in school, they have to use it in the exam to be able to write their examinations, or to go further in life, or to go further in research. But if you don't use it, if you fail to make use of it, then you become a kafir. It becomes useless. Your qualities within you, you have qualities within you that can empower you to make you a better human being. And this applies to every human being. And if you don't utilize it, you find they become useless. So you have a quality of charity in you and you don't use it. You have a quality of truth and you don't use it. That quality in you becomes useless. We know that in even the material self. If you have limbs, if you have organs and you don't use them, they become what you call atrophied. They become useless. You can't use it again. If a person stands up for 10 or 20 years just raising their hand in the sky and leaving it without moving, as some people do, they think that is devotion to God. Look, I could stand on one foot for 10 years, 20 years. Or I could stay away from food or so, and then when they're ready, they can't digest anything. So that you find that the lack of use of things render them useless, and that is what kufr means, uselessness. That people have qualities with them that don't have any benefit. Or in some cases, then the Quran describes it goes further. It becomes shirk. And shirk is not just worshipping a stone or a piece of wood. It is when these qualities are not only become useless, but they become opposite. You develop them in an opposite way. Instead of charity, you become stingy. And that becomes part and parcel of your personality, stinginess or miserliness. And there are movies and there are books written on people, Scrooge or so, who have that kind of mean attitude and mingy attitude. So with just the concept of God that given to us in the Quran, we find that there is so much information about how we can develop ourselves, how we can become better, how all human beings could become better human beings. You take away God from humanity and you see what the mess that the state of the world is in today. They're not focusing on finding God. They're trying to find peace. They're trying to find solutions. They're trying to solve money. They're trying to find all kinds of things, but not God. When God, Allah, and God is not just a word. The word Allah is a concept, an existence that possesses all attributes of perfection. So you find this one being, Allah. You understand the nature of the divine being, and you can solve all the problems of the world. The Prophet Muhammad did it. He discovered Allah, and he utilized that knowledge throughout his life. It's not a miracle drug. but it is a matter of utilizing the attributes of Allah to bring change in your community and society. And events will happen, occurrences will be there, circumstances, positive and negative, there are challenges in life. The Quran tells us that. You can't say because I have Allah, I will never be sick, I will never be poor, I will never lose anything. There are times when these things happen. You find, and we've had in our Ahmadiyya caravan, the lecture we had here in our own mosque about cyber security. Sometimes you find your accounts are hacked, all your information is gone. Sometimes it affects your even financial situation. These are things that happen. But the Quran is pointing out to us that the attributes of Allah are available to us to empower us, to recoup all the losses we have. If you have health, you can regain your health. Or at least if you can't regain the health of normalcy, you will at least be able to strengthen your own self to exist with that particular affliction that you have. In England, right now I saw a big incident the government is facing of trying to withdraw from people disability grants that they're getting. And people are complaining and say, well, this has been abused, that people who said, well, I just, I'm depressed, so I need a grant, and they get it. One individual who had an infection, and because of that infection, he had a 5% chance of living. He was treated with antibiotics, and eventually he survived. But in the process of surviving, they had to cut off his hands and his feet. And he shows a picture here with his prosthetics. He said, I don't have any hands, I don't have any feet, I have artificial hands and feet that I use, but I go to work every day. And if I can do it, why other people can't do it? There's so many people who show us how they can live with their disability. Sometimes they're even better off with a disability. It's said that people who are blind have a more sensitive sense of touch, greatest sense of touch. If you want to check for a counterfeit dollar or so, you give an individual, he looks at it, and you give it to a blind person, and he can tell you by just the feel of it, whether in fact it is true counterfeit or not. That has been used here, so that everybody has certain talents. So what the Quran is pointing out to us is that we have good sides in us, drivers that driving us to do good, but we also have inner devilish tendencies that try to take advantage, that try to deny us and naysay and prevent us from doing that which is good. So Allah wants our spiritual self, our nature that He has given to us, to be developed. And so He is indicating to the forces within us, our desires, our passions which are within us, that they should be humble. These are our desires are what will propel us. If I don't have a desire, I won't desire to eat, I won't eat. If I don't have the desire to go to work, I will not go to work. If I don't have the desire to study, I will not study. Desires are very important, but then they can also be counterproductive if we have the desires for the wrong things. And so He says, I want those desires to be in service to you, support you, but to develop the excellent qualities that you have that came from God. Unfortunately, the Quran also points out to us that the devil, the Iblis, the naysay, the inner voice that tells us, that's why we have a conscience that says to be or not to be, as Shakespeare has put it. The devil uses arrogance and swelledness, builds you up to justify not doing the right thing, to influence human beings by temptation, to drag someone down so that those excellent qualities of Allah become useless. It's a simple formula that the Quran gives us. This is such a wonderful book. It doesn't have to go and give us a long history of, this tribe in Palestine and in where Abraham came from, the land of Ur, and all of these things, or flying from Ayodhya to Sri Lanka in order to find your wife who has been kidnapped and sitting under a Bodhi tree and getting enlightenment. All of these are stories and legends that are probably useful in their own way. They do have certain messages. But the simplicity of the Quran and the way that the Quran puts arguments that can be expanded to be of benefit to human beings, that is unique. That is why this Quran is such an important book. And we are grateful to Allah that He has given us the opportunity every Friday to be able to give a khutbah explaining the Quran. And now we have an additional benefit of spreading this and streaming it all over the world. Perhaps the messages that we give here will benefit people in China, in America, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Finland, in the North Pole, in the Atlantic, who may look at our YouTube channel and streaming and benefit by it and realize, well, you know what these things are saying is, perhaps I should explore further what this Quran says, because there's so much more that could be explained. And that's why it takes not just one lecture, but every Friday to give a Jummah khutbah to explain what the teachings of the Quran contain, because this is such a unique and wonderful book. So what the Quran is pointing out to us here is that there is power in humility and there is destruction in arrogance. If you look at it, you will see the power in unity, as the Quran says, we have been created as dust. Why is that so? Because dust has the power within it. It has a quality within it that when it goes through a certain process, it can become very firm. And what's that process? You first of all mix it with water. It becomes mud or clay. The Quran says we are created of clay as well, and speaks of water as coming from the heavens, mean knowledge. So you give a person knowledge, they become pliable. They can make decisions. And then it says, if you can shape it. With that clay, you can make it in any shape. You can make a bowl, you can make an idol, you can make whatever it is, murti or anything you can make. You can put it in a mold and make any shape that you want. But then, that shape can easily be broken. If you put it in fire and you bake it, it becomes ceramic, it becomes brick if it's a stone. It becomes very hard. More difficult now to break. It becomes firm and it can be used to build buildings, tall buildings and structures and so on. And you take any material and put them through certain processes and you can achieve so much. So the Quran uses these analogies, these metaphors to point out to us the capabilities we have. And by using the knowledge that is given to us in the Quran and knowledge that we have in the exterior world that science also gives us, we can build our personality and character and become the greatest human being on the face of the earth. And that has been testified to by people who are not Muslims about the Prophet Muhammad. That's why the Quran says, Muhammad Rasulullah. Muhammad is the example of utilizing the attributes of Allah and becoming the most important person in the entire world, a compendium of all the prophets of God. He has within his personality all the excellences of all the prophets of God. So we are molded with, when we are molded with correct values, with the excellent attributes of Allah, not merely our passions and desires, as some people do and become crooks and criminals. The Quran points out to us that by humbling ourselves, and it uses the word for humility to God as ibadah. And ibadah, as we know, also means the crushing of stones so that it can fit into any vessel. A stone, a hard stone or brick will not fit into all containers, but if you break it up into small pieces, it can fit into any container of any shape, any size. Similarly, the human being, instead of being arrogant, instead of being swell-headed, instead of being stone-hearted, if it is humble. When we humble ourselves, when we make ourselves small, and that is manifested in our sajda. That's why the word is used here, sajideen. Become humble. We metaphorically, we humble ourselves and be demonstrated in a physical way by going down in sajda. Well, some people cannot go down, but the concept is there for those who can go down in sajda. You have that ability to make your body into the smallest that it can really curl itself up to. And if you can't do it like that, you sit in a chair, you stand in, the Quran says standing, sitting, lying on your side, doesn't matter. But the idea is that you feel that you are humble, that you know that you have made yourself into the smallest position as possible. And so there's power in that. So that ibadah, you can fit into any situation because you get the attributes of God that will help you to face any situation in life. And that's why the Quran says there's no compulsion in religion, you know. If there's no compulsion in religion, why do people allow themselves to be compelled or to behave in a wrong manner? They are influenced by gang leaders. They are influenced by so many people. Recently, an individual was hacked to death with an axe, chopped his skull. He was just delivering messages in another part of the world. And the gang met him and they chopped him, stabbed him, beat him up, even took an axe and hit him in his head and split his skull. All these things, a living person, you're doing that. Why? But he was also a gang person. He was a member of a gang, and rival gang went to that. So people develop, they have no love for each other. They know honor among thieves, really. The gangs are fighting each other because they have made the qualities of love and kindness and tolerance and patience and cooperation and respect and honor and all of these things, they become useless. They become kafirs in that sense. So the Quran is such a unique book that it gives us the idea that if we give ourselves up to Allah and let Him control us, let Him empower us by means of His rule, by means of His angels, if we are controlled by His qualities, His excellent qualities, His attributes that He has given us, we can become great people, if not in the eyes of human beings, but certainly in the eyes of Allah, in the eyes of our Lord and Creator. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quran al-Azim. Wa nafa'ana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikr al-hakim. Innahu ta'ala jawadun kareem, malikun barrun rahim. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. May yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa may yudlil fala hadiya lahu. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa nashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma ansur man nasara dina Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam waj'alna minhum. Allahumma aghzul man qazala dina Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa la taj'alna minhum. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i zil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'izukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. Uzkurullaha yazkurkum wad'uhu yastajib lakum wa la zikrullahi ala akbar.